In life, there is a small but very distinctive group of people, those who notice things others overlook. This makes them emotional scanners by nature. The moment they step into a room, they can sense whether the atmosphere is heavy or light, who is tense, who is quietly hurting, and who is pretending to be fine while actually falling apart inside. They pick up on micro-expressions, subtle changes in tone, the rhythm of someone's tapping foot, even the way a person breathes. In reality, this ability isn't something they learned, it's instinct, an emotional vision that allows them to touch the truth inside others long before those people touch it themselves. But this ability, though it sounds impressive, has a darker side. It makes them the ones who carry more, feel more, and burn out faster. Many people in this group often feel different without knowing why. They detect insincerity before anyone else notices. They see problems even when the entire group is still avoiding them. And because of that, they are easily misunderstood, pushed aside, or labeled as too sensitive, too negative, or overly analytical. Some people even feel uncomfortable around them because no one enjoys standing in front of someone who can see what they're trying so hard to hide. And in today's video, we'll explore why seeing what others cannot see can become a significant risk, and, more importantly, how to transform this deeply perceptive gift into strength instead of a burden. And to understand where this entire journey begins, we must turn to the first truth: who these individuals, those who can see deeper than everyone else, really are. These people are not fortune tellers, not mystics, and not individuals with supernatural intuition. They are simply highly sensitive observers, people whose emotional radar functions on a level far more refined than average. When others focus only on words, they notice the silence inside those words. When others see a smile, they look at the eyes behind that smile. And while everyone else is engaged in cheerful conversation, they can instantly sense who is disconnected, who is pretending, and who is quietly drowning inside. Their ability to see, hear, feel operates far beyond normative perception, not because they overthink, but because their mind automatically collects emotional data from every tiny detail around them. A slight eyebrow tension, a shift in vocal tone, a half-second pause, each becomes a clue that allows them to understand others without needing to ask. But this remarkable capacity comes with a cost. They burn out faster than anyone else. When you feel too deeply, you also process too much. Small talk drains them because it feels empty. Half-hearted relationships destabilize them because they sense the lack of authenticity long before anyone admits it. They cannot engage comfortably in surface-level interactions because their attention is always drawn to the emotional layers beneath the facade. And the more they sense, the quicker their energy collapses. What sets them apart most is the sheer volume of emotional information they absorb. When they hear a sentence, they don't just hear the words, they hear the emotion beneath it. When they see an action, they don't just register the action, they feel the state of mind that created it. When they enter a group, they don't just observe the dynamics, they sense the invisible emotional currents running through the room. The most crucial point to understand is this: they are not overthinking, they are over-perceiving. They don't choose it, it's simply how their emotional system operates. Their sensitivity isn't something they developed, it's something they must learn to manage. Every day, they confront emotional information that others never even notice, and this constant overload often leaves them exhausted, isolated, and misunderstood. They see the truth in people far too early, far too clearly, so clearly that even they sometimes wish they could be more normal, just to move through life with a little less weight. But this is where we must start. They are different, not because they want to be, but because the emotional world around them speaks too loudly for them to ignore. But there is one truth: most of them never speak aloud, and this is where their journey becomes complicated. The ability to see too much always comes with a cost. Second truth: why deep perception turns into a burden. For those who see through emotions, sensitivity isn't a soft personality trait. It operates like a hyperactive sensor, constantly picking up every subtle shift in the environment. Most people overlook a nervous blink, a slight tremble in someone's voice, or the empty tone behind a polite smile. But to them, each of these signals lands like a sharp alert, and the problem is they cannot turn it off. There is no switch for, "I want to feel less today." No setting for, "Blur unnecessary details." No emotional filter. They absorb everything, even the things they never wanted to notice. This is why so many in this group feel overwhelmed. A simple interaction isn't simple for them. While others hear information, they hear emotion. They hear the fear under the words, the conflict beneath the fear, the wound beneath the conflict. But the depth goes further. They often detect problems before anyone else knows something is wrong. They see cracks in relationships early. They sense emotional tension long before it surfaces. They recognize insincerity when everyone else still believes in harmony. This makes them the ones who see too early, and society has never treated such people gently. Truth arriving too soon makes others uncomfortable. No one likes being seen clearly when they haven't faced themselves yet. So the labels come: too sensitive, overreacting, overanalyzing, negative. He said, not because they are wrong, but because they are right before others are ready. Another consequence: they become emotional containers for everyone. People vent to them, cry to them, depend on them, and they, by instinct, listen. But what drains them isn't their own emotional landscape. It's the emotional load they carry for everyone else. The paradox is painful. The more they understand, the more easily they are used. Not maliciously, but repeatedly. And the heartbreaking truth is, they never chose this. They didn't ask to see so deeply. They didn't ask to feel so intensely. But their mind didn't give them another option. That is where a gift becomes a burden, one they must learn to manage before it consumes them entirely. To understand why this ability to see deeply affects someone's life and psychology so profoundly, we have to step into a more complex truth. Not everyone sees through emotions in the same way. There are 4 types of people in this group, each with a different perceptual mechanism, a unique strength, and, equally, a unique wound. And these differences determine what they struggle with, what they lose, and what they must overcome to live in alignment with who they truly are. But before we explore each type, there's one essential thing you need to know. This ability to see beneath the surface has never been random. It is shaped by a particular kind of brain, an unusual sensitivity, and an emotional history carried since early life. And now, we move into the 4 types of deep perceivers and the psychological consequences behind each one. Type 1, the somatic empath, the body feeler. This group pays the highest price. They don't just perceive emotions, they absorb them. Someone is sad, their chest tightens. Someone is angry, their shoulders clench. Someone is anxious, their heartbeat speeds up for no apparent reason. The frightening part is that they often cannot differentiate between what belongs to them and what belongs to someone else. As a result, they live in a state of physiological overload. Headaches, muscle tension, unexplained fatigue, insomnia, digestive issues. People often label them as overly sensitive or fragile. But the truth is, their bodies are carrying emotional weight that should belong to many different people, not just them. The biggest consequences: they avoid crowds. They fear conflict-heavy environments. They dread being pulled into someone else's emotional story. Not because they're selfish, but because their nervous system simply cannot take more. Type 2, the cognitive perceiver, the pattern seer. This is the type who detects systems, patterns, trajectories, and outcomes long before they unfold. They don't just hear words, they read intentions. They don't just observe behavior, they see the repeating cycle. They don't just watch a relationship, they see the ending from miles away. They can predict an argument before it starts. They sense the breakdown of a friendship before the other person notices. They understand someone's motives long before that person understands themselves. But society reacts harshly to people who see too far ahead. When they warn, "This relationship isn't healthy. That person is hiding something." Say, "This situation will collapse soon." They are labeled negative, pessimistic, or joy killers. And by the time the outcome matches exactly what they predicted, it's already too late, and they're once again the one expected to fix the emotional fallout. The biggest consequences: they watch everything fall apart, even after warning people. They're called worriers or overthinkers. They become isolated because others can't handle their accuracy. Type 3. The intuitive sensor, the energy reader. This group is difficult to explain because they read what no one says. They sense heaviness in the room before anyone notices, shifts in someone's attitude, danger approaching, even without evidence, suppressed emotions hanging in the air. Entering a new environment feels like walking into a room filled with frequencies. They immediately detect what is off. The greatest consequence: they are the first to feel overwhelmed. Before anyone recognizes a problem, they already know. Before someone explodes, they've sensed the build-up. Before someone leaves a relationship, they've already felt the withdrawal. This keeps them in a constant state of alertness, difficult to relax, difficult to trust completely, unable to silence their intuition. Type 4. The pure perceiver, the one who just knows. The most mysterious and the most misunderstood. They don't analyze. They don't connect dots. They don't rationalize. They simply know. They know who's pretending. They know who's hurting. They know who's lying. They know when something is falling apart, even if no one says a word. And the more they try to explain their knowing, the more confused they become, because this ability doesn't come from logic, but from deep nervous system intuition. This group often faces 3 major consequences. People dismiss them as dramatic or overly sensitive. They lose confidence because they cannot prove their intuition. They become lonely because no one understands how they know things. But the most painful part is this: when their intuition turns out to be right, no one apologizes. No one acknowledges their insight. People simply stay silent and continue treating them as strange. No matter the type, all deep perceivers pay the same emotional taxes. They experience unintentional isolation because they understand too much to blend in. They trigger discomfort in others. Since no one enjoys being seen too clearly, they become emotional containers for people around them and carry feelings that don't belong to them. They spend a lifetime reading others while almost no one truly reads them. And above all, they live with chronic exhaustion, not because they are weak, but because they process far more than any nervous system is designed to handle. And once we understand who the 4 types of deep perceivers are, the next truth we must confront is the dangerous territory they all share. The silent psychological threats that most of society never notices. First threat: emotional chaos from the environment. The irony is this: deep perceivers don't need to participate in a situation to be affected by it. Simply being in the same space is enough for their nervous system to pick up every emotional signal around them, like a receiver without an off switch. At a gathering, they don't just hear laughter, they feel the tension, the comparison, the envy beneath it. In their family, they don't just hear words, they sense the pressure hidden under every sentence. At work, they don't just see tasks, they absorb the fatigue, frustration, and emotional strain in the room. This makes them burn out faster than anyone else. Not because they are weak, but because they take in everything without any filter. The danger here is the slow erosion of their emotional boundaries. Day after day, they store feelings that do not belong to them, until eventually they can no longer tell what is theirs and what is not. Second threat: defensiveness and backlash from others. This is the wound that hurts the most. When they notice what others try to avoid, people don't respond with gratitude, they respond with defense or attack. A gentle question like, "Is something making you sad?" is met with, "No, stop overthinking. I do ways." A genuine observation such as, "You seem tired today," is answered with, "You're always so negative." Because no one wants to stand in front of someone who can see what they are trying to hide, they choose denial, distance, or blame. Over time, deep perceivers learn to stay silent, not because they've stopped seeing, but because the price of speaking up has become too high. Third threat: the collapse of personal boundaries. This is the most dangerous zone, and the reason so many deep perceivers end up chronically exhausted. When someone feels too deeply, analyzes too quickly, and understands too clearly, they slip into a state of emotional merging. They feel other people's sadness as if it were their own. They worry on behalf of others. They carry someone else's disappointment into their sleep. They try to heal, fix, or resolve emotional burdens that were never theirs to hold. No one asks them to do this, but they don't know how to stop. The moment their boundaries blur, they lose the ability to tell what emotions truly belong to them. And once they lose their boundaries, they begin losing themselves. This is not weakness. It is the natural consequence of a sensitive nervous system operating in an emotionally overstimulating world. What hides beneath all three threats? Regardless of which type they belong to, all deep perceivers face the same reality. They absorb emotional turbulence far beyond what a normal nervous system is built to hold. They become the target of unconscious defensiveness because people fear being seen, and they constantly risk losing their sense of self by carrying emotions that were never theirs. These three forces don't just drain them, they often convince them that their gift is a burden. But the truth is this: it only becomes a burden when they have not yet learned how to wield the power they were born with. And once they have confronted these silent threats, the emotionally perceptive individual must face the next crucial shift. The fifth insight: learning to control their sensitivity instead of being controlled by it. This turning point does not arrive as a flash of enlightenment. It comes after countless cycles of exhaustion, confusion, and emotional overload, until they realize, if they do not learn to use their sensitivity consciously, it will continue to consume them from within. The first transformation occurs when they begin to slow their emotional response. They understand that not every feeling they sense requires action, and not every emotional signal picked up from the environment is theirs to resolve. Their perception is so sharp that they can be pulled into emotional narratives that have nothing to do with them. Therefore, they must learn a new skill: the ability to not engage. Next, they learn to use their perceptiveness selectively. In the past, their intuition operated involuntarily, always on, always absorbing. Now, they begin to switch it on intentionally and turn it off when necessary. Someone lies, they notice, but they don't need to confront it. Someone is sad, they feel it, but they don't need to carry it. A tense atmosphere arises. They sense it, but they don't need to fix it. Their sensitivity stops functioning like a bucket collecting everything. It becomes a refined instrument, activated only in the right context, with the right people, at the right moments. Then comes a deeper evolution, learning to observe without absorbing. They start to understand the difference between *I see your sadness and *I must carry your sadness. This distance, subtle but powerful, becomes the foundation of their freedom. Gradually, they build emotional boundaries powered by awareness, instead of being dragged unconsciously into everyone's inner world. They understand that sensitivity is not a call to intervene. Sometimes, it is simply a signal to hold space or step back. They begin to love differently, loving without dissolving into the other person. They listen differently, listening to understand, not to absorb. They help differently, helping when they have the capacity, not out of obligation. Another major shift occurs when they stop trying to explain what they sense. They have long been doubted, dismissed, or accused of overreacting. But as they mature, they realize not everyone deserves access to the depth of what they perceive. And sometimes, silence is the most intelligent form of protection. That silence is not avoidance, it is emotional strategy. It is discernment. It is mastery. Eventually, once they learn to direct their sensitivity, rather than be directed by it, the very trait that once drained them becomes a stable source of strength. They grow calmer, less reactive, less entangled in other people's emotional storms. And because of that, they naturally become magnetic, not by effort, but by the quiet confidence of someone who finally understands their own power. And when all of these pieces finally weave together, one last truth becomes clearer than ever. People who see through emotions never become cold when they learn to protect themselves. They simply grow wiser in choosing whom to connect with, whom to open up to, and whom to keep at a safe distance. Because after enduring emotional chaos from their environment, defensive reactions from others, and countless moments where their personal boundaries collapsed, they finally understand that not everyone deserves access to their inner world. They recognize that sensitivity is a gift, but only becomes a true gift when they learn how to hold it properly. Once they understand boundaries, identity, and their own worth, they no longer see their sensitivity as a burden, but as a refined instrument that allows them to live deeply without being drowned by what they feel. And when they stand firm, they become a quiet source of inspiration for others, those who also feel too much, but haven't yet figured out how to turn that sensitivity into strength rather than weakness. Their presence alone makes others feel lighter, safer, and more understood, even when they say very little. In the end, their journey is not about becoming like everyone else, but about learning how to become themselves in the most powerful and clearest version possible. A self who can observe without dissolving, love without losing themselves, and feel deeply without self-harm. And that is the complete beauty of the emotionally perceptive. They don't just see deeply, they learn how to live deeply, while remaining at peace. And that is the most powerful, silent transformation an empath can ever experience. Not rebellion, not resistance, but a return to their true self, their true limits, their true inner strength. Because in the end, an empath's awakening is never just a personal journey. It is a reminder to all of us that when you stop being afraid of who you are, you become a light for those still searching for their way.